Morning, second service. How we doing? Fantastic. Hey, if you're just jumping in, we're in the middle of this series kind of during the Christmas season. We're calling Christmas at the Movies. And really, it's pretty simple. The idea, we're just showing some clips of our favorite Christmas classics. And we're just making some observations and seeing how some of the plot lines that pop up in some of our favorite Christmas movies actually pop up in the Christmas story as it's told from the Christian tradition's perspective. And that's kind of what we're doing. So last week we did The Grinch. If you missed it, you can grab it, of course, online. You can listen or watch it there. And today, Home Alone. And here's my one observation from the movie Home Alone. Things get weird when we're left alone. That's it. Things get weird when we're left alone. In fact, this week I was reminded of the French adventurer, scientist, sociologist Michel Siffre. In 1972, he did something kind of famous. He locked himself in a cave in Texas for 6 months just to see what would happen. And it's still today on the books. It's one of the longest self-isolation experiments in history. And because he's a scientist, he meticulously sort of detailed and documented what was going on with him, 205 days in isolation. At one point, a couple months in, simply writing the words, barely string thoughts together. After the 5-month mark, he tells a story about trying to make friends with a mouse and the mouse wanting no part of it. It kind of reminds me of Tom Hanks' character making friends with the volleyball Wilson in that movie Castaway. Do you remember that? And listen, it's experiments like Siffre's, and it's from observing crews on space stations or scientists working in remote regions of Antarctica, or more recently, kind of on a global scale, the isolation experienced through the COVID-19 pandemic. All of this sort of gives us a glimpse into some of the cognitive and mental effects that social deprivation can have on us humans. In every study, in every experiment, in every observation, right, it all comes to the same conclusion. Things get weird when we are left alone. In fact, this week I was just looking at some of the trends over the last 21 months as we've sort of ebbed and flowed through COVID and sort of tried to find ways of coping with some of the isolation, some of the distance. And the data is, I think, lots of things. I think it's interesting, I think it's entertaining, and I also think it's a little bit sad. For example, in 2020, sort of right in the midst of the heart of like the pretty serious sort of lockdown stuff, where we all sort of rushed into our own versions of a Texas cave, and what we did is we turned our computers on, and we spent 1.25 billion years online. That's a long time staring at a screen. But since we were home, and many of you were even working from home, one of the trends that kind of popped up is we found that we can wear different clothes than the ones we would wear out in public, really. But now we do wear out in public, and that's fine. But it was athletic leisure wear. Athleisure, is that what it's called? I think. So just to give you an example, in 2019, so pre-pandemic, we spent $80 billion on athletic leisure wear. 2020, $284 billion. Some of you have way too many pairs of leggings. That's what that means, right? That was a lot, right? And now it's just a thing, right? Lululemon and all of Fabletics, all of that is just sort of everywhere now. But because we were spending so much time at home, we decided that our sort of metaphoric Texas cave needed an updating, right? We needed to class up the place a little bit. And so we also spent $420 billion in home renovation. Show of hands, how many of you did at least one home project in the last 21 months? Anyone? Yeah, a few of you. Some of you are like, not just one, like it's 16 or whatever, right? But after home renovations and after our online shopping, we still had some time on our hands. And so for many of us, that meant an extra glass of wine and joining a wine club or 2 or 6. Alcohol sales went up 55%. But for many, and this is where maybe things turn a little darker, many, the extra drink at night wasn't enough. And opioid overdoses went up 30 in 30 of the 50 states. And of course, the increased stress of being with the people that we live with more than we'd ever hoped we would be with them led to a 15, depending on your state, 15 to 20% increase in domestic violence. And while more recent studies suggest that us humans are more mentally resilient than we think, it still holds true that anxiety and depression increased by 400%. I've often laughed. One of the funniest things I think about all of this is sort of culture's take on how introverts are interacting with the pandemic, like that it's a good thing for you introverts. Like you were like, this is my dream, right? And I've laughed at some of the memes that have popped up, right, regarding you introverts. Everything's canceled because of coronavirus. Yes. I feel seen and heard, right? Or when you find out our normal daily lifestyle is called quarantine, right? It kind of, all of this sort of reminds me of Home Alone, right? When Kevin wants some space, kind of that first scene we showed you in the kind of collage of clips, right? Where he's absolutely convinced that separation from his family is the key to the good life, right? Here's again what he says. He says, "This house is so full of people, it makes me sick. When I grow up and get married, I'm living alone." Did you hear me? I'm living alone. I'm living alone. Everybody in this family hates me. I don't want another family. I don't want any family. Families suck. I don't want to see you again for the rest of my whole life. I don't want to see anybody else either. And of course, right, what makes the movie so funny is Kevin gets his wish. He is left alone, but quickly realizes that even a short time of isolation can have dire consequences. As we meet, of course, in the movie Home Alone, the wet bandits, Harry and Marv, as they lay siege to Kevin's home, hoping to take advantage of his vulnerability. But here's the thing, as funny as memes about introverts are and as hysterical as Home Alone is, the reality is none of us are immune to the consequences created by what I think we could call the ache of isolation. The ache of isolation. And the pandemic has just simply pushed many beyond their emotional pain tolerance, right? Leading people to sort of cry out, act out, lash out, or even check out. It's interesting, one of the kind of trends I've been following for some time is what's now being coined the Great Resignation, as many Americans have just sort of checked out of their careers. I mean, millions every month simply resigning, just quitting their jobs. Others have checked out of marriage, family, relationships, and even their faith. Now, here's what I don't want you to do this morning. I don't want you to hear what I'm saying and make some conclusions about what I think is right or wrong regarding various mandates that we've experienced over the last 21 months. I'm not nearly smart enough to speak intelligently regarding those decisions. But what I do want you to hear me do is simply make an observation that going it alone can take a bad thing and make it much, much worse. Because when we feel cut off, when we feel isolated, when we feel socially deprived, things get weird. And this isn't just a psychological observation. It's not just a sociological observation. This is actually an observation that has been made for thousands of years. In fact, the authors of Scripture address the issue of isolation again and again and again. And we know the Bible, right, didn't fall out of the sky last year, written in English by like one person, right? No, it's like multiple authors over a 1,500-year period of time. It's actually a library, 66 books in this library. And the first book of the library, we call it Genesis. On the second page of the first book, this ache of isolation gets addressed by the author of Genesis. And here's how this ancient author talks about it. It says, "The Lord God said, 'It is not good for the man to be alone. So I have a solution to this problem. I'll make a helper suitable for him. Now, what's interesting about the context of this passage is that at the time, literally speaking, the man, right, his name's Adam, wasn't alone. He had God. We're told that God and him walked together, cool of the day, through the garden, just living it up. And God is saying, not good enough. You and God, if that's all you got, it's not good enough, at least according to God, who would say, you need someone else. You need a bestie. You need a BFF. You need a partner, right? You need somebody in your life. I'm not going to be enough for you. We need to be connected to one another in community. We need the give and take of relationship. It's what we were designed for. And when we don't have it, even for a short period of time, right, we actually become less real as people. We become less fully human when we're denied basic connections and relationships that we were designed to enjoy and kind of struggle through and fight through to some degree. And this idea actually gets illustrated through a really kind of interesting encounter that Jesus has with a sick person, with what they call leprosy. And I just want to kind of highlight a couple of things from Jesus' encounter with a man that has leprosy, because I think there's just some interesting parallels to maybe some of the last 21 months. But it is Jesus sort of speaking into, I think, directly this idea of the ache of isolation. And so let's just really quick, just want to walk through this with you. And it's a guy named Mark records this encounter. And Mark wasn't an eyewitness, but we're pretty positive that he's getting his content from an eyewitness named Peter. And Peter would have very likely been at the encounter that we're about to walk through. And so here's what we read. Mark writes, a man with leprosy came to him and begged him on his knees, if you're willing, you can make me clean. Okay, just to get a handle on how dramatic this moment is. A couple of maybe more modern examples of what's possibly happening here. Remember when HIV, AIDS, very big thing, 80s, and all the talk, all the, it was just a huge deal. And from that, what you started to hear in like different news stories and even laws got created because of what people were doing. Some people who knew they were HIV positive, right? They were not telling their partners, and they were not taking any protective measures, knowingly passing along the virus, right? Now, because people did that, we actually have laws. It's a crime. You can't do that, right? Or even a little closer to home, imagine that you know for a fact somebody is COVID positive. They are in the heart of like symptoms or whenever they're most contagious or whatever. And they sit right next to you indoors without a mask and decide to just cough and spit in your face. That's kind of this. It's just like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? This is the picture of what's going on with this guy with leprosy who shows up and just gets kind of right in Jesus's face. And now in Jesus' day, we have to know that people took this leprosy thing very, very seriously. In fact, if we kind of rewind 1,400 years from the time of Jesus, Israel is kind of setting up society, so to speak. There's more than 100 passages that deal specifically with leprosy, how to treat it, how to deal with people that have it, how to keep from getting it. It goes on and on. In fact, let me just give you a couple of examples. Right? Anyone with such a defiling disease must, again, this isn't like kind of, hey, this would be a really good idea kind of thing. No, this is like law. This is legal code. Anyone with such a defiling disease must wear torn clothes. Let their hair be unkept, cover the lower part of their face, and cry out, unclean, unclean. As in, if you're sick with this, you have to tell people. No HIPAA laws in ancient Israel, right? There's no like medical privacy. No, if you're sick with this, you gotta let us know. And it can't be subtle. It's gotta be, tear your clothes, don't brush your hair, wear a mask, and I want you to shout, unclean, unclean, sort of the scarlet letter, if you will. And here's the thing with leprosy or any sort of skin disease in ancient Israel. It made you what they called ceremonially unclean. which meant you could not participate in community. You couldn't participate meaningfully in civic life. You couldn't participate meaningfully in religious life. And you had to live in isolation away from others. You were essentially quarantined. Now, what's even more interesting, I think, about how leprosy was dealt with in Jesus' day is that they were pretty convinced that you could get it by way of air and breathing on people. And so they made rules specifically about how far away you could be to someone that had leprosy. And so if you were upwind, meaning like your breath could go downwind and get on somebody, you had to stay pretty far away. In fact, they said 100 cubits away, which is about 150 of our feet. That's really far away, right? But if you were downwind, meaning it was much less likely your kind of air, your breath was going to go kind of upstream, you could be much closer, but still kind of far away. And we should be really familiar with this number. You could be 4 cubits from somebody, which is about 6 feet. I'm pretty sure, though, in Israel, they didn't have those cool little circles you could stand on to separate you, right? 3,500 years before COVID-19, the Jews instituted social distancing. I find it just kind of interesting. And so this guy in the passage, in this encounter with Jesus, right, he's behaving incredibly recklessly according to Jewish law, and he's violating the mandates. And really, this legal requirement, him doing this, he was now subject to death, the death penalty. You could be stoned to death if you broke those rules. And this guy, knowing the consequences, sort of boldly approaches Jesus. And here's the request he makes. If you're willing, you can make me clean. Now, here's what I find really interesting about the language that this guy uses. He doesn't just come out and say, Jesus, heal me, does he? He sort of is saying something else here that I think includes his healing, but I think also brings in, a deeper pain. And it's not so much physical healing as it is this ache of isolation. The years of wearing torn clothes and shouting unclean and living away from community and not being able to participate in your faith or with your family. You know, for modern medicine, we're pretty sure what they called leprosy, we call Hansen's disease. And Hansen's disease is interesting, and one of the big deals with it is you don't experience pain. In fact, that's the problem. You lose sensation in your extremities. And so all of the normal warning signals that most people have, like hot or sharp, they don't have, leading to all sorts of serious injuries. So if you don't have Hansen's disease, put your hand on a hot stove, there's a signal that is screaming at you, that's hot, move, right? Or if you put your hand on a tip of a knife or a nail, well, there's a warning signal that's screaming at you saying, ouch, don't do that again, right? And so we can oftentimes prevent more serious injury. Well, if you have Hansen's disease, you don't have that. You don't feel pain, leading to some pretty dire consequences if your hand is on something hot and you're just leaving it there for some time, or it's something sharp and you're cut or whatever it may be. In fact, Hansen's disease is often referred to simply as a painless hell. I mean, it's an awful thing. But this guy's ultimate desire, if I had to make an argument, and I am, isn't so much healing from, say, pain, because he doesn't have any. He's not experiencing physical pain. But there is something deeper going on that I think he's requesting when we see this word, make me clean, not heal me. He wants to be back with people again. He wants to be included again. He wants to get out of his cave in Texas. He doesn't want to be home alone any longer. There's this ache of isolation coming out, this pain of social deprivation that he wants Jesus to remedy. Do you remember when in the movie, again, we just saw the clip a moment ago, but Kevin gets to that point, does he not? Where he's experiencing, at first, he's jumping on the bed and he's throwing food and he's battling with the wet bandits, right? I mean, he's doing all of that, and it's great and it's hysterical. But as the movie goes on, he begins to feel the ache of isolation, and he encounters that Santa, that kind of crappy Santa. And here's, again, what he said. He said, this is extremely important. Please tell him, Santa, instead of presents, I just want my family back. No toys, nothing but Peter, Kate, Buzz, Megan, Lenny, and Jeff, my aunt, my cousins, and if he has time, my Uncle Frank, okay? And here's the thing. I think after 21 months, to varying degrees, yes, we kind of get what Kevin's feeling. At least at some point in the last 21 months, we've kind of experienced a little bit. And of course, to a much less degree, we get sort of this man with leprosy. We get sort of this ache of isolation. And so this man, again, that man with leprosy, he breaks quarantine, he comes to Jesus, and he believes Jesus can do something for him that nobody else can do. So he throws himself at Jesus' feet, and here's Jesus' response. As expected, Jesus is filled with compassion. And he reached out his hand and he touched the man and he says, I'm willing, so be clean. And immediately the leprosy left him and he was cleansed. Jesus is risking exposure, reaches out his hand, touches the man, and he didn't have to, did he? I mean, there's all sorts of recorded moments of Jesus healing people and not touching them. I mean, at some point, he's healing people and not even in the same sort of vicinity of people. He's just saying, they're healed, just go back home. I mean, he certainly didn't have to touch this man, but again, Jesus, I think, is addressing a deeper desire, a deeper pain, a deeper need. Inclusion, community, togetherness, to be desired and wanted again. Yes, is healing a part of that? Of course. But again, there's something else going on. Sure, the leprosy was gone, but what Jesus did in that touch, Jesus seemed to kind of get what the leper was talking about and wanted to heal this deeper wound, this ache of isolation. And really, I think this short interaction between Jesus and this man with leprosy is, in many ways, I think, representative of the Christmas story, right? I mean, the Christmas story is all about, at the end of the day, being motivated by love. Jesus pursues us all the way from heaven to earth to heal our deepest wounds and to remind us we're not home alone, that there's somebody in our corner. The Christmas story is a story of love in the midst of or really a story of love to bring people together in community and relationship in the midst of a world driving us apart. You know, if you've seen Home Alone, I think probably the most powerful part of Home Alone is when mom recognizes they don't have Kevin and her desire, her willingness to do whatever it takes to get home to her son. This sort of relentless pursuit of her son. She stays awake for days. She hitchhikes. She pawns off her possessions to get an airplane ticket. I mean, she's willing to do anything to make sure Kevin knows he's not alone. In fact, if you forgot the scene, I didn't. Let's take a look.
So we have the $500, the pocket translator, the 2 first-class seats. That's an upgrade from your coach.
Is that a real Rolex?
Do you think it is?
No.
But who can tell? I also have a ring.
Oh, that is beautiful.
Come on, Irene, they're boarding.
Oh, this gal has offered us 2 first-class tickets if we go Friday. Plus a ring, a watch, a pocket translator, $500, and
the earrings. You love the earrings.
She's got her own earrings, a whole shoebox full of them, dangly ones. Come on.
No, but
I'm desperate. I'm begging you, from a mother to a mother, please.
oh, Ed.
Please.
Oh, all right.
Again, I think it's a picture of what's happening in the Christmas story. In the birth of Jesus, we're seeing the radical extremes that God will go to make sure we know that he loves us and that we're not left home alone. And here's the thing, and I'll wrap up with this idea. as awesome as that is, and as much as we want to celebrate the Christmas story, it can't just be our story. I think we're sort of discipled all week long in sort of American individualism. Like, it's all about you, and you're a special snowflake, and great, it's awesome. But the thing with Christianity is that it pushes back against that and essentially says, it's never about you, like ever. And that your response to what Jesus is doing for you or has done for you is to go do that for someone else. And so the Christmas story isn't just something Jesus does for us. The Christmas is something that we're actually invited to participate in, right? That us being moved by Jesus' compassion, his model of love for us, the extremes he would go to make sure we know there's somebody in our corner. He then says, your response to that is to go do that for someone else. In fact, the authors of Scripture actually talk about the Christian Scripture, we call it the New Testament. The authors of Scripture actually say you need to be like the hands and feet, the physical representation of Jesus out into the world. That in a world right now suffering so much from this ache of isolation, that we would care enough to sort of invite people back in, to let them know that they're valued and desired and wanted. One of the things I do is just part of my job. I'm just constantly tracking sort of the data that's out there regarding churches and people's faith and all of that, and just how it's working sort of in the American context. And one of the things we just know now after 21 months, is that 32% of 2019 churchgoers in America are gone. They're gone. They're not watching online. They're not in the room. They're not at the church down the street. They're just gone. We don't know where they are, right? They've just checked out of their faith. And this is church people. This doesn't include also the people that are out there that think, why would I ever go to church? What does Jesus have to offer me? What are the people that show up at church? What do they have to offer me? There's a whole lot of those people in our community as well. And I think one of the reasons, this just maybe one of the reasons, we've seen so many certain negative outcomes come out of sort of lockdowns and mandates, and some of that is because instead of turning to people, well, I already showed you, we turned to shopping, alcohol, home projects, or even inward, and sort of let our anxiety and depression take over. See, without a community to fall back on, we just fall, right? We just fall. And so as a pastor of a faith community, I'm certainly concerned about this number, 32%, but also just as a Jesus person, I just find it so troubling. And again, not because I want neighborhood to be like the biggest church in Visalia or whatever. I could care less about any of that. But I am troubled because the church is the place, or at least it should be the place, where you can turn to in a world where sometimes you just don't know where to turn. That in a world suffering the long-term effects of isolation, that the beauty of the church when it's working properly is that there's always a community waiting for you. That's what the church does. The church connects people. It's not a building. It's a community of people making good in the world, introducing them to a Jesus who's so radically in love with us, would do anything to make sure we knew we weren't home alone. And in a world where it just seems like the hits keep coming, we need relationships that ground us. They're absolutely essential. We are literally born. We are born, and in the moment we're born, we are trying to figure out who's in our corner. And the church, when it's operating at its best, it's the place where you can walk through those doors and you can just find a whole group of people who are committed to being in your corner. Right? This extended spiritual family who's willing to come alongside you and take some of the hits that come at you, so you don't have to go it alone. I'm a little worried that number 32% and beyond, for those that weren't even church people back in 2019, there's a whole lot of people out there in pain, they're disconnected, You no longer have a someone or a group of someones willing to do whatever it takes to make sure they know they're not alone. And the problem with that is they can end up in a dark corner, reclusive, withdrawn, cut off, making a bad problem much, much worse. Because if you've ever felt like you're the only one in the whole world going through what you're going through, that's a very dark place to be. And the church, it is just this extended spiritual family that kind of can collectively say, yeah, me too. Me too. I mean, isn't that what friendship is anyway? You share your story thinking you're the only one that's ever experienced that. And the person on the other side of that story just says, oh, you too? You too? Yeah, me too. Let me share my story. And to know that others have been there before, that is simply a game changer. And so, my, challenge, encouragement this morning is that we don't just celebrate Christmas, but we participate in Christmas. Right? That as Jesus was so radical at making sure we know we're not home alone, that we do the same thing for other people, the people in our sphere of influence, that we're willing to take a step towards them and sort of invite them back to make sure they know they're not home alone. You know, one of my favorite passages in the whole Bible, it's such a weird passage, you're going to think I'm so weird, but a guy named Paul, he wrote a letter, it's just private correspondence, to the Jesus people in the city of Rome. And he ends the letter. It's found, today we would call it Romans chapter 16. You should just go read it. It's really weird. Paul didn't have chapters again. It was just a letter. We kind of added those later. But chapter 16, all it is a list of people that Paul felt like he could depend on. 29 people. Chapter 16 is a list of 29 names. It's just Paul saying, you in my life has made a difference. You are someone I can depend on, right? You were here for me when I needed it most. I mean, that's a lot of people, 29. I mean, statistics bear out. The average American, if you were asked to sit down and write a list of 29 people you could depend on, most would not come even close to 29. In fact, 15% of people argue they don't even have one close friend. And that's a really, really sad place to be. And you know what the invitation, I think, to participate in Christmas is? It's to live in such a way that you make somebody else's list. That when they're writing down their list of people they can depend on, you're on it. That you are someone else can depend on. 32% of church folk checked out. Who needs you on their list? Who needs you to let them know they're not home alone? That's what it means to participate in Christmas. And you know, the church, like sort of this bigger thing, this organization that we call the church. You know what our job is? My job is to make sure that this is really easy for you. We want this to be so easy for you to participate. I think it's more than this, but it's at least this. Hey, Forrest is doing this really cool thing on Sunday mornings where we just watch movies and eat popcorn. It's great. You should come. Super spiritual, right? Or, hey, everybody goes to church on Christmas Eve. I mean, that's like requirement number one if you want to get to heaven. Don't miss this year. Come with us, right? There's 4 services. Which one do you want to go to? I mean, in fact, we've even made Christmas Eve invite cards. They're like at the next where there's a table out on the patio, there's a you can grab some of those and like just say, hey, why don't you come to Christmas Eve with us? I mean, yes, it's much more than just inviting people into this building, of course. I mean, what would it mean to invite them into your living room? Host a dinner, right? I mean, I don't know, but at least from sort of this, us, the organization side of it, We've tried to make it so easy. We've tried to do so much this Christmas to make it fun and engaging and compelling and inspiring. And so you can show up and you know what's going to happen every week. You know. The music's going to be great. Forrest's going to be so-so. But if you know what's going to happen, you can prep people for that, right? Listen, it's going to be like 80% good, right? And then, listen, they are church people. I don't know what to tell you, right? They're just weird. And so, however it is, but, you understand. So this is what we're doing on behalf of us as individually, and you and your spheres and the people you're interacting with. But I want you to leave here going, at least 32% of church folk are gone. And then all the other people who just were never church folk. That percentage, this big chunk of people, and you are interacting with them on any given day. And how can you live so that you make somebody else's list? Because I don't know how you get through a season like the holidays. If I asked you to sit down and write a list and you just didn't have anybody to put down. I don't know how you make it. And as a church, that should not be acceptable to us. And so, who needs you on their list? Sound okay? Yeah? Hey, I'm going to pray, but then we have a little bit of family business to take care of right after that. So I know it's kind of a weird transition, but just kind of hang with me. So I'm going to pray, and then I have a quick little hey, I want to make you aware, and then we'll get out of here, and you can go spend all your hard-earned dollars at the Maker's Market. So let me pray. Heavenly Father, thanks. Thanks for today, and man, thanks so much for making sure we knew we weren't home alone. And help us to be the kind of people that operate and live in such a way that we'd make somebody's list, that they'd know because of us and how we engaged, that they would know that they're not home alone either. Help us to celebrate the heck out of what your love for us did, but also help us to participate in it and let it make a real difference in our lives and in our world. And so, Jesus, we love you. And it's in your name we pray. Amen. Okay, here's the family business, and I'll make this quick. Every year, sort of December, you guys know it. You get all the emails too. Giving Tuesday and end-of-year giving and all of that. Well, Neighborhood, of course, is a nonprofit. We do the same thing. Everything we do, honestly, is because of you. Your generosity is what sort of is the driving force. And so in the seat backs in front of you, there's a little card, and it just says Project Christmas on it. And so what we do every year is we call it Project Christmas, and we just invite you to sort of say, hey, if you've not, we'd love for you to participate in the mission. And we always sort of add some projects, why we call it Project Christmas. And so our goal always is sort of big. Traditionally, big chunk of sort of your generosity comes in December. And with that sort of takes us through the first part of next year. And it really matters. It just really does. And so last year, you all gave about $250,000 collectively to December, which allowed us to do so many incredible things last year. So this year, we're actually saying, man, if we could get to 275, it would just be blow the doors off of this place. And one of the cool projects that we have in mind for your generosity in the month of December in Project Christmas, if you have preschoolers or you've got friends with preschoolers or nieces or nephews or cousins or grandkids in preschool, we've got a preschool playground that is a part of their sort of Sunday school experience. And it really hasn't been updated since we built it 20-something years ago. So one of the things that we're going to do is sort of update and upgrade the preschool playground. We sort of, when we built everything, we kind of upgraded everything, but we thought nobody, 2-year-olds won't remember. So we just let it alone. Well, we love 2-year-olds, and we want that to be a really great space for them. And so that's one of the things we're going to do. But again, your generosity, I just want to invite you to participate. You just will never know. You will never know the impact your dollars have. They're literally changing lives. And I just always can't thank you enough. And you just have no idea how proud I am when I interact with other lead pastors from around the country. And I feel so fortunate to be your pastor because really you all are so generous and incredible, and we can do so many incredible things. And I always feel so bad for my friends who their church just is terrible. They're just awful. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you should quit. Why are you spending time with those people? So it's only like kind of kidding. Like it's pretty, and so anyway, so that's sort of my spiel. Grab that card. Really consider, man, we'd love it if you participated and really knew that you were a part of everything we do around here. And when you see that new sort of the update or the kind of fresh coat that we're going to put out there, it's just going to be really cool. So anyway, yeah, love you guys. Merry Christmas. See you next week. Go spend some of your hard-earned money. Take it easy, guys.
Just holding your hand. We're gliding along with the song of a wintry